place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Monday, June 2nd, 2025, and it's episode 1043 of Living Free in Tennessee. And it's a Monday show, so it's sort of an anything goes sort of day, along with our usual Monday segments. I've got a variety of show with just various questions from y'all and a couple I came across over the weekend wanderings that we took this weekend, and I thought I'd build them all into an old school Living Free in Tennessee variety style show where it's just like, hit me with anything. So that should be fun. If you're on the live stream today and you have a question or comment, put the word question or comments in all caps so I can see it, and that will help me out a ton. Also, let your friends know that we are live on the internet with fun information. Okay, before we jump into the main topic of today's show, we've got some sponsors to thank, and we also have our usual segments. I'm going to start with our featured event of today's show, which is River and Imanee's Solstice Meetup at Haven Villiage on June 21st. I'm not quite sure what time of day it starts, but you can check it out at havenvillage.net. I'm sure there will eventually be information there. She's going to send me a flyer over when she gets that put together. I'm doing a cheese making demo there. So that is going to be a fun one, and you can come check it out. There's a whole bunch of really good things to see over at Haven Villiage. They are basically they're developing a different way of having a neighborhood. So it's a big piece of land that they're dividing up. You can become a member of their community, and it's a living arrangement. So you build your house, but it has to be out of hempcrete. So hempcrete is a way of building that's sort of like concrete meets hemp, so that your house is breathable. It's antimicrobial. I think it helps stabilize temperature and all sorts of stuff. It's really fun to see what they've got going on there. They've got some off-grid solar. They've got a vermicomposting system. And they've been building out the neighborhood, as they like to call it, while also dedicating part of the common areas to raising food. So they've got some homestead activities going as well. Check it out on June 21st for the solstice. I also have two sponsors to thank today. The first sponsor is Discount Mylar Bags. Discount Mylar Bags does just that. They source Mylar bags in bulk and pass on the savings to you. Check them out, discountmylarbags.com. I love that they're a Tennessee company, and I love that I know the owner. I knew the owner before Discount Mylar Bags was Discount Mylar Bags, so that was kind of fun. Welcome to the live stream, DFW and Mike. The British redneck is in the house. That's kind of fun. Okay. Next up, we want to thank the Wealth Steading podcast. That's John Pugliano's podcast all about investing and how to make your money make more money for you, which is a pretty cool skill to have. Check it out. Great episodes, about 15 minutes long. You can go to investablewealth.com and click on podcast to download those episodes, or just use your podcatcher and search for the Wealth Steading, like homesteading, only wealth with an L, Wealth Steading podcast. And it will come straight to your podcatcher. You can subscribe. It's a great way to interact with John. If you're listening to him over on Fountain, kick him some sats. Convince him that Bitcoin isn't a passing fancy. All right. Hello, Matt. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the live stream. Our first segment today is Tales from the Prepper Pantry, where we talk about storing what you use and using what you store. And we're in time to fill it up now, right? Hey, Jim, welcome. Grow Noster. That's right. I put out on Noster that we were live, and Jim retweeted it right away over there. Retweeted. I don't know. Reposted. I don't know. Like, the whole Twitter vocabulary is gone, and Noster isn't Twitter, but it is a decentralized social network where you can keep control of what you see. And if somebody shuts you down off their client, you can just pop up another client, access your stuff, and you're good to go. So it's a lot more cancel proof. I really like renoted. Apparently you're renoting. Anyway, it's nice to have something like that where I can start future proofing what we're doing. Because as we all know, I'm already spreading medical information. I'm wearing my SOE shirt today. I spread missing information because we were talking about Berkey water filters on YouTube, and they were not too thrilled about that. So we got zinged for spreading medical misinformation because we talked about the fact that there are silver in those filters, and there's a lawsuit with the EPA about it. So Yeah, that was, I peeled it. Their bot didn't care. So I don't know. Like that whole system is messed up. Anyway, Tales from the Prepper Pantry, talking about what we store, using it, and storing what we use and not storing stuff we don't use. World War III is about to start, apparently, according to the internet. And if you haven't looked at your stores recently, you might want to check that out. Okay, I'm making light of a current event situation. There is raising tensions in the world, but why do we have a pantry? Why do we engage in ongoing food storage practices? Why do we develop resilience into our lives by growing some of our food so that we can be, oh, I don't know, I'm garlic independent, right? Like I grow garlic, I plant garlic, I grow that garlic. It's been going on for a decade now, and it's happening again this year. I will never have to buy garlic again unless I'm on the road out of town and didn't bring garlic. It's, these practices help develop stability in our lives so that when things are tense, we're not worried about, do I have enough food if for some reason supply chains shut down? Or do I have enough food if the electricity goes out regionally and we can't process credit card payments and I don't have cash, right? It's kind of cool from that perspective, but even better is I lost a job. I have a food rotation plan, which means I have a bank account of food that I can tap into. And that's just one thing I don't have to worry about buying while I figure out what my next job's going to be. So these kind of things work out really well. It also helps you save time because you're not running to the grocery store for that one item, which is a huge waste of your time and you should never do it. Never, 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 never. Not unless it's a 911 emergency. Do not do that, right? And that just goes back to storing what you use and using what you store. It's a great budgeting exercise, as well as not a bad way to start getting control of what you eat, which has other health benefits, right? So what we've got going on, I have looked, and there are 20 quarts of extra tomato sauce that I canned from last year. So I'm thinking maybe I don't need to can a bunch of tomatoes this year. So we'll see how that goes. I may pull back on some of my tomato canning. Salsa was cutting it a little close. I think I have about 6 jars left of that. And by the time all of the salsa ingredients are ripe off the garden, those will probably be gone. We'll see. Welcome to the live stream, Tori, and Family Driven. We are initiating canning season, however, which is why I'm looking at my canned goods. Now I have some pickles left. I have some pickled beets left. I have a few cans of green beans, and I think it's just because we use fewer green beans at the workshop than we usually do, which is fine. So I canned about 60-ish jars of green beans last year. I'll probably do 55 this year as a result of that. I like to kind of see how many we can and then track that and then make adjustments as we go, because what has happened over time is what we eat here changes and shifts. And so knowing, we used to go through a lot more tomato sauce. I think it's because I stopped eating grains and we don't do pastas anymore. So there's no lasagna being made here, or squash lasagna sometimes, but not like it used to be. I used to make a bunch of homemade pastas with spaghetti sauce on them. We do still make cauliflower crust pizzas, and I put tomato sauce in other things, but I think dramatically less tomato sauce usage. It was kind of shocking. I was like, wow, that's a lot of jars of tomato sauce left over. We're drying herbs from the garden. So I've got oregano drying in bunches right now. I got a bunch more oregano I could harvest. We're going to actually, we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, but as part of starting to open our doors to people being here, we're selling some of the products from the homestead. And I don't have a lot of products to sell from the homestead that aren't just lamb meat and coffee. So I realize that I'm drying a lot more herbs than we can use. So I'm expecting there will be some dried herbs over time. I don't know if there'll be dried herbs on Sunday's event because they're still drying, and I don't believe they're dry enough to sell yet. But we might have some fresh herbs. We'll see. So that's happening, and it's nice to get to a point where I can grow most of our herbs. There are some of the more exotic herbs I source from offsite. But we even made paprika last year. So I'm hoping to get a lot more peppers for paprika, both sweet and hot paprika this year, but we'll see. And then I'm continuing Meatloafa Palooza. So June is dedicated to me doing tax stuff, Tactical doing tax stuff. So it's tax month. And then to make up for it, comfort food comes to mind. So I'm looking at all of the ground beef that we have in the freezer, and I know that we like meatloaf here. It's a comfort food. It's a real popular dish around the holler. And so I'm making about 8 pounds of meatloaf at a time, and then serving some for dinner, and then making individual freezer meatloafs so that going into fall when we get busy, because right now it was busy in May because I spoke a lot. June is kind of busy. July, I believe I'm going out of town a little bit to help with a second knee replacement for mom. So there's a little bit of like ongoing busy, but nothing like what happens when we ramp up into the fall. Self-Reliance Festival happens. Jack Spirko's workshop happens. And then his coffee production season is off the hook, right? So what I'm doing now, while I have time, besides canning abundance from the garden, is getting ready to have easy to deploy meals so that it doesn't take me time later. And doing like when you're making one meatloaf, you might as well make 4 or 5 meatloafs, because why not, right? And I'm doing 2-pound meatloafs right now. Like I usually did like really huge ones. And Tactical actually can eat 3 pounds of meatloaf in one sitting by himself if he wants to. But I'm doing 2-pound meatloafs just because that means he can have a 2-pound meatloaf when I'm out of town. I can do 2-pound meatloafs if I'm having some and he's having some, and there might be a little bit of leftover. Or if we have people over, I can do 3 or 4 meatloafs, but it's a little bit more scalable that way. So that's kind of cool. So Meatloaf-a-Palooza is the reward I get for focusing in on something I hate, which is taxes. But taxes are necessary, and I'm embracing more and more and more that I have to be a spreadsheet person to generate more profit from this homestead. Robin, welcome to the live stream. I haven't seen you on a live stream in a long time. Yeah. Doctor's waiting room. I see. Yeah, doctors run late sometime. Okay, our next segment is the weekly shopping report. This is not weekly anymore. This is the intermittent shopping report from Joe. He retired, and they are not necessarily on any particular schedule now, but they did do a shopping report about a week ago. And here's what he said. Dollar Tree was first. The drink selection always changes, but there's plenty of stock. That's all we needed this time, after adding a variety of storage containers and the like, and minor health items over the past several weeks. The online price of a 2x4x8 stud at Home Depot is $3.85. Remember when that was like $12 or $13 in 2021? Yeah, I do too, because that's when I put Taj Mahal in. It hurts my heart a little bit. Okay, Aldi was last. We found everything we wanted. There was a number of price changes since the last report, but nothing dramatic. Egg and milk prices have come down. Okay, so here's what we had. We had a spike, and then we're unspiking at this point, right? Staple prices are as follows. Bread, $1.39. Eggs, $3.46, down. Whole milk, $2.66, down. Heavy cream never goes down, $5.29. Orange juice, $4.25, that's up. Butter, $3.75, that's up. Bacon, $3.99, that's the same. Potatoes, $4.39. Sugar, $3.29, that's up. That's weird. Flour, $2.35. And 80% ground beef is a higher price at $4.69 per pound. $4.69 per pound. That's darn close to what it cost me per pound to just buy a whole cow. It's a little bit more than that, but still, yeah, that is what it is. Robin says, life helping dad with his appointments and transportation and property stuff. That's keeping her off of our live streams. Hey, no guilt there, by the way. Don't feel bad about it ever. And people will come up to me and they'll be like, I'm behind on your podcast, or I haven't listened in a while. It's okay. I love it when you listen to my podcast. I love it when you share my podcast, but also it's not an obligation. Like, this should be something that you find useful and that adds, something to your life, rather than something you're like, oh, I'm going to feel guilty because I'm going to see Nicole at Strong Roots Resources event this weekend and I'm behind. You know who's really behind is Tactical. So ask him about that. He actually thinks it's really funny, because I'll announce what we're doing on the podcast and then he won't know it's happening. And then I surprise him later. I'm like, well, I said it on my podcast. You got to keep up, dude. Anyway, back to the shopping report. I make an additional trip tomorrow to Walgreens. I may make an additional trip tomorrow to Walgreens as I recently opened my last melatonin and I want another wrist brace. Meow Mix is what I will look for there. Untainted regular is still $3.59 a gallon. Okay, next up we have a frugality tip in from Margot, our frugality tip generating machine. She's in Florida, by the way. And if you're on the social networks, you can interact with Margot. She's on Telegram in the Living Free in Tennessee Telegram group. It's LFTN group on Telegram. And she is not interacting in Facebook, I don't think, but there is a group on Facebook that's starting to have more activity again for some reason. Like it just kind of went dead there for a while, but people have started posting stuff there as well. That's the Living Free in Tennessee Coffee Break group on Facebook, and you have to answer some questions. And I don't have anybody helping me moderate it right now, I don't think. So, might have to look into that. But definitely check out those groups if you want to have some interactions with a network of doers, which is what we are at Living Free in Tennessee. Anyway, here's what Margot has to say. Down here in Florida, we're getting ready for the disaster preparedness sales tax holiday. For 2 weeks, we get to purchase things such as batteries, coolers, tarps, radios, fuel tanks, ooh, cool, generators, and not pay sale tax. We're currently in the market for a new generator, so we're going to save about $100 in taxes by buying during that break. So look up your sales tax holidays and save some of your money. Yeah, so we talk about Agorist tax advice and keeping your money in your pocket. Another way to do that is totally to take advantage of sales tax holidays. And that's, like here they do like a school supply one, which isn't super helpful because it's like 4 packs of socks that they don't wear. And because I'm picky about socks and whatever, it hasn't been very helpful for me, or a computer that's not powerful enough for what we need to do here. But sometimes we just have a full-on sales tax holiday, or when they've waived the grocery sales tax, that's a good time to store up your pantry, right? Because you're not paying those taxes, and every state is different. So, we're going to come against every state is different against some of the questions that come up today, but that is what it is. Before we go on to the main topic of today's show, if you read the Monday mail, you've already heard these things. But I got up this morning and I was like, there is so much cool stuff going on in our network, and it's just like popping up on all of my social media, and people are talking about it. And of course, I was with people this weekend, so I was hearing what they were doing. I got to hear all the cool stories of people moving to Tennessee and building their homestead. Or, somebody's on a 1 acre lot, but they've got all this food production. And I realized I'd been seeing something for about the last week and a half that you may not have seen. But if you know Brian from Lots Project, he and his wife, Corey, have started K&B Custom Built. And if you look at their Facebook page, there's a beautiful handmade picnic table. They're doing a bunch of different woodworking things. Anything from like candle holders to they have these like gravity wine holder thingies, like is up on the screen right now, where you can hold a bottle of wine and it's a plank. And some of their things are already up on an Etsy store, but they also are just posting out what they're building. And I suspect they will start taking orders after people have gotten excited about this. But I know Brian and Corey are really enjoying working together. And this is just an example of how our network sparks small businesses, right? So, our network is not responsible for this business sparking, but small businesses pop up in our network, and we can support somebody like Brian or Corey by giving them a follow, by sharing it out, by telling your friends about it. And then if you're in the market for something, like check out what would it cost to have a picnic table made. Now, I know somebody already asked him that question, and he's like, well, we're just making them right now so that we have a good assessment of how to price them. But I just thought it was cool to see those two doing this project and wanted to highlight them today. So go give them a like on Facebook. And if you go to their Facebook page, it has like all of their other social networks. So you can totally see that as well. I heard like a strange noise in my house, and I think it's a dog whining. But anyway, they've only got 16 followers right now. We can do better than that, guys. Like, go give them a follow. I followed them with 2 of my accounts. So go give them a follow. Go give them a like. Give them a share. And see if we can get them connected to a bunch more people in the network. The other thing is that so coffee has been really tricky to source this year. And I committed to a large contract for my organic Colombian beans. And also my air conditioner in the roasting shack died. So that was not great timing. Anyway, so we're doing a coffee pre-sale at Holler Roast Coffee. If you go to hollerroast.com, what it is you can buy a gift certificate for yourself or somebody else. It doesn't really, it doesn't matter if you buy it for you or yourself, but basically you go to Hollow Roast, and we're soft launching right now. So I'm not like going big until I talk to a few other people about maybe kicking in some rewards. But it's a picture of sort of like a coffee grinder and some coffee made, and it's called the HVAC coffee pre-buy. I would like to pre-sell enough coffee to offset the replacement of an HVAC system for the roasting shack. And you can, if you buy the gift card, it'll send it directly to you. You can start using it on the website anytime. You can give them to people. If you buy a $500 gift certificate, you'll get a second $25 one. If you buy a $1,000 gift certificate, you will get a $100 one. So in addition to that, I've got some digital downloads that'll come out to you if you support this. And I'm tapping into the network to see if a couple other of my friends will pop stuff in. That's why we're hard launching next week, because we're putting this together this week. But it's called the HVAC coffee pre-buy. Check it out if you're a coffee lover and you buy Hollow Roast anyway, or maybe use it to get some friends interested in Hollow Roast. I don't know. Check it out, hollowroast.com. Okay, now it's time for the variety show. Yep, that's right. It's time for the variety show. We've got questions in, and the first one comes, who does it come from? Scrolly McScrollface. You know what's really fun is that I didn't do Operation Independence, but that's okay. We'll do that later. Tina, Arkansas. I've got more beets than we can eat. How do you preserve them? And it made me aware that the last time I talked about how to make pickled beets on the Living Free in Tennessee podcast was about 9 years ago on episode 4. That's a long time. So there are a number of ways you can preserve your beets. First of all, they are a root vegetable, so they just last a long time in cold storage. But if you're beyond that at this point, you can pickle them. That's my favorite way to preserve beets, and I have 2 recipes. So my famous pickled beet recipe is not a sweet beet recipe. You don't add sugar to it. You basically use a quick pickle brine, and then you process the quarts for a little bit longer than you would if you were doing cucumbers. And it's a 1/2 cup of pickling salt to 5.5 cups of 5% vinegar. Make sure it's 5% vinegar. You have to look at the thing. That's just like normal white vinegar. 6 cups of water. And then you just bring that to a boil to dissolve the salt. And then while that's going to a boil, what I do is I'll take all of my mason jars, and I prefer to use quarts, but you can use pints, whatever. And to each quart jar, add 2 heads of dill weed. If you don't have that, get dill seed at the store. If you can't get that, get flaky dill stuff at the store. If you can't get that, don't use dill. Or buy pickling spice. They make a pickling spice mix. 2 to 4 cloves of garlic per jar. 1 to 2 hot peppers per jar, cayenne or jalapeno or whatever, fresh or not fresh. I dry them. I end up using dried peppers now because the beets are coming on now and the peppers aren't coming on for a bit. 6 peppercorns per jar. And then I cold pack the beets in there. Now, here's the thing about this. You want them to be peeled. There are 2 ways to peel the beets. 1, use a peeler, peel the beets. 2, you can bring them to a boil for about 5 minutes and then let it naturally cool to where you can put your hands in there, and then you can scrape that peel off in many cases, not in every. It depends. Like some beets take a little bit longer than 5 minutes. Some take 15 minutes. What I have decided is that I prefer to peel them if I have time to peel them with a peeler, because I find the mouthfeel of the pickled beets is less squishy, so it's a little bit more firm if you don't boil them first and then cold pack them and then pour the boiling brine over them, leaving a 1/2 inch of headspace, and then process them. It's a sneezy day for 20 minutes for pints, 25 for quarts. There's always 2 in there. So that's my pickled beet recipe. Now, here's the thing about that recipe. What's important is that you have the brine ratios that I just said. By the way, this is in the show notes in writing. It's important the brine recipe is that, and that you bring it to a boil and you pour it over them and that you process them for the right amount of time. All the other stuff that goes in there is flavor. So if you can't find the dill you need, is what it is. You can use like a teaspoon of pickling sauce mix, which will have not exactly the same flavor, but it'll have some good flavors. If you can't get cloves of garlic, you can use garlic powder, whatever it takes. You just get it done. Peppercorns I keep on hand. If you don't have them, you can put sprinkle pepper in there, and that's fine. It's fine. It's, the part that's important is that you keep the ratios about right and that you process it for the right amount of time. So that will give you a beet where you can taste the natural sweetness of the beet, but it's a pickled beet, so it will be tart from the vinegar, and that dill flavor and the garlic and the hot pepper, they really blend really well with the beets. People who don't like pickled beets like those pickled beets. Now, not every person who doesn't like pickled beets like those pickled beets, but I have had that experience a number of times. If you want a more traditional pickled beet recipe, this one comes from my Aunt Helen. She was my great aunt. She died when I was about 11. And her pickled beet recipe won first place in the Oregon State Fair because they actually tasted the canned stuff then. I don't know if they still do. I know they don't in Tennessee. Like, they just look at the jar and say, is it pretty? Which makes no sense to me at all. But I guess they don't want to risk eating people's food and getting food poisoning. I don't know. It's always something I've found funny. It's like they assess your canning capacity on if you can source vegetables that are all the right size and look pretty in the jar. And it does not matter at all if you processed it for the right amount of time. It just matters if you have the right headspace. So anyway, and yes, I've gotten some awards in the Tennessee State Fair, as a matter of fact. I canned some pretty stuff. That's all I'm saying. So this is Aunt Helen's pickled beets. You use a 1/4 bushel of beets. You'll make about 10 pints with that. The brine, you just make enough to cover the beets. So you have to decide if you're doing, I usually do a double batch of brine every time, but the brine ratio is 1 quart of vinegar at 5% acidity, 6 cups of sugar. Yes, I said 6 cups of sugar. I use pure cane sugar. It takes a lot of sugar for this recipe. 2 tablespoons salt, plain kosher or pickling salt, preferably not iodized. That's because that makes funny colors, guys. 2 teaspoons of pickling spice. Now, if you don't have pickling spice in the jar, it's going to be cloves, dill, mustard seed, peppercorns, all mixed together like dill seed. And then the beets. You boil the beets in the water and skin and slice them if you want sliced ones, or leave them whole, however you want to do that. Cold pack your jars and then completely cover the beets, leaving a 1/2 inch of headspace. And then if you want to do fridge beets, you just put them in the refrigerator. If you're doing fridge beets, make sure you've boiled those beets so they're cooked all the way. If you want to dehydrate them, you leave them in the fridge for 2 weeks and then you dehydrate them. Or you can process them at the same times that I had above. So you can water bath can them at the same time. Again, for this one, if I'm going to water bath can them, I'm going to peel them differently than if I'm going to do fridge beets or whatever. So, okay, so those are some ways you can use beets. They are great sliced on salad with some cheddar cheese and balsamic vinegar and basil leaves, which are coming on right now. Also, you can puree them up and freeze them and use them in borscht or throw them as an additive in stew. So they're also just like slice them up in your stir fry. They're all good that way. So anyway, that's what I would do with beets. I've never, like, every time I have too many beets, I just pickle them. I just keep pickling them, and I end up with a lot of pickles. And I usually make a few batches of borscht, and I put that in the freezer. I actually got a recipe for borscht from Sunny Puzika's that I haven't used yet because I didn't get enough beets to do it last year. So I'm going to try his recipe this year if I can get my hands on beets. I bought all the beets at the farmer's market last week, by the way. I have beets coming on, like finally successful growing beets here. And also farmer's market has them. With all the rain we've had this spring, it's not a terrible beet year in Tennessee. Okay. Mark from Middle Tennessee says, what's your setup for the new farm stand? How are you building it? And how are you handling payments without having somebody there full time? Okay. So I sprung on tactical last week that we're going to start doing a farm store. And it sounds a lot, farm store is probably not the best way to say it, or farm stand. I would like it to grow into a place where people in our network can have things for sale. And we can access those things, and everybody benefits from the project. I know other mutual assistance groups and communities in Tennessee who have done a private membership association, and all of those things I'm thinking about. I have not executed on those. What I know I can do is I can set up some shelves under Taj Mahal and have things for sale at our next event that come from here. And I know that I can reach out to some network people or to some neighbor homesteaders nearby and probably get them to put some stuff in this weekend when we have our meetup on Sunday. And then people can buy or not buy. And it's at this point, we're just sort of getting our toes wet with the project. I would like to have an honor system stand with just QR codes to, Venmo and all the ways you can pay, plus a little cash box. And as I was talking about this idea with Tactical later that day on Friday, he said, you could have pre-orders. Like, we could leverage the information we get from people here locally, what they have for sale, take pre-orders, and then have 2 pickup days a week. Kind of like a community CSA sort of thing, but not. So those are all some ways that I'm looking at putting it together. What I'm not committing to is how it's going to be done. We're just going to get it going, right? We're going to start with what we have. If it does have to be more of it requires some manning of the system. Like if I have lamb meat for sale, for example, probably need to be around for that part. If we're going beyond the gatherings here, we will have, the Advent goes like, we start by having stuff at events. And then the second thing is maybe we have an honor-based stand. And then the third thing is maybe we have some hours that we're open, or we have a pickup set up, right? I'm going to depend on feedback from the community. If nobody shows up at all, then we're not going to even get that far. So for me, I haven't gone like way down the rabbit trail of how this will go, because until I know it will go, it's not worth me investing a whole bunch of planning time there. And that's, I think, the important thing about looking for revenue streams on your homestead is sometimes you just have to try something. You do a test, see if it works. Speaking of that, if you're in the community and you have something non-perishable you want to add to the store idea, contact me, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. You've got to figure out how to get it here. But, I could have, I don't know, like MT Knives make some pretty darn good soaps. I could have a few things like that here. The deal is I don't want to have too much inventory around, because I have to keep it fresh. Even things that are non-perishable, I have to keep them fresh. Or if you make something crafty, that might be fun to have. Because what I do see happening over time is we will probably move it into the pump house or somewhere else that's more of a building. But for now, what I have is outdoor covered space and some people coming by. So that's my farm store. So I don't know. What are you guys doing for farm stores? Let's share ideas. Those of you who have put together farm stands. I know somebody I can't remember how he does this, but he allows RV campers on his farm for free, but they have to agree to spend a certain amount of money at the farm. And so that's how he's doing it. People come in their RVs, they stay there, and they buy a bunch of meat from him, and that all works. Okay, Lisa from Kentucky. We've downsized our garden space this year. How do you decide what to plant when you're working with limited square footage but still want to preserve food? So I think she means like if you want to produce enough that you can preserve food for the winter and you're in a small garden space, how do you plan or decide what to plant? And that's actually a pretty good question, because this year I went from a fairly large garden. I currently have 4 raised beds, 3 of which are planted, 1 of which is all garlic, because I am garlic independent, and that's that bed. So I'm only using like 2 garden beds in my aquaponics systems and my tomato. Like there's other places things are, which is a significant drop in square feet. And what I decided to do as a result of this is I thought about, what do I love to eat fresh? I actually didn't think about what do I want to preserve for the winter. I went first, like, what do I love to grow and love to eat fresh? Because the most important thing, I think, is eating your garden food fresh, not growing your food for winter storage. because you get that instant access to the most nutrient dense that food will ever be when you pull it from your garden and eat it. Like, I went out, I picked beets today, and they're going to be pickled after this show. I am pickling beets this evening, right? So make that list. And then list what things would I really like to have reserved. Like, I know I want 60 quarts of green beans, and I want probably 24 pints of salsa. And like, there's a list of stuff like that. I want to have a whole bunch of dried oregano and basil and a whole bunch of herbs for cooking. I want to have a certain amount of garlic. I want to have a bunch of frozen chopped up jalapeno peppers and sweet peppers for stir fries all winter long. That's something I'm hoping to add, because we get all excited when it's pepper and squash season here, because all of a sudden we have access to that, because I haven't been keeping it over winter. So I believe this weekend I finally have access to squash for the first time. It's not my squash, it's from another homesteader. But so list that, and you have those two categories. Plan your garden around the things you want to eat fresh, and figure out what the season like that looks like, right? So I'm about to go cut all my lettuce out except for the lettuce I'm letting go to seed to collect the seeds from, because it's bolting anyway. It's getting hot. It's time to put the longevity spinach from inside the house to outside the house. I'm getting the sweet potato greens going, because I like sweet potato greens in the summer and winter. And I have a couple of broccoli plants left because they were doing okay, but they're coming out because they're in my way. And I want that sort of the summer wave, right? So you kind of start with the early greens and the brassica family, the cabbage, the broccoli, the cauliflower. And then we're transitioning to tomatoes, squash, hardier spinaches like Malabar spinach. I can't remember what. So the fennel is doing great. So I've been having fennel greens a lot in stir fries and chard. The chard will keep going. The peas are coming out. The green beans are going in. Squashes are going in. We'll see how the squashes do. I don't think my soil, it's my first year with the soil, so I suspect my squash will go in, eaten, and come out. I mean, like, get eaten by the bugs. But we'll see. We'll see. I've been working pretty hard with the compost tea to try to keep the garden going. So after you have that list, decide what you like on that list, and then plan, like, look at how square foot gardening kind of works, but plan your bed in layers. So you have the climbing layers can go up, like cucumbers can climb a trellis, put some trellising in for that. Have that in a place where it can shade the things behind it that maybe you don't want in direct sun, but it doesn't block the things like peppers and tomatoes that want direct sun, right? So you put the taller things in the back and the shorter things in front, in essence, if you're going from north to south. Taller things are on the north side of the bed, and the smaller things are on the south side of the bed, so to speak. Or if your rows are north to south, which is actually the way you're supposed to have them, you can kind of figure out what gets morning sun, what gets afternoon sun, and have your row divided down the middle. You don't want to have to reach over something to get things. That's the other thing. So really think about that. And then once you've figured out what you have space for, and you know that you can plant denser, but not too dense or nothing will grow, assess what you think your production will be, and like really nurture and care for those plants, and really bring in the compost tea and really care for them. And they'll do really well. If you keep the fertility up all summer long, get the shade cloth up if you're in a place where you need to get the shade cloth up. All of those things help your garden production. And you're not going to produce enough to really can. Like, I may get a case of green beans off of my garden that we're not just eating fresh. That's okay. Because the last thing you should do to make this successful for yourself is invest in local relationships with people who are growing food. Go to your farm market, get to know people, become the person they let know when they have too many green beans or too many tomatoes or too many squash or too many beets or too many peas or too many whatever, right? And buy from them. That's how you get that going. That's how you can maintain the seasonal eating and not have such a big garden. And I know that it is better to do really well in the small garden than to fall behind in the big garden. You'll actually produce more out of the small garden than you will out of the big garden, because you won't be losing things to your own inattention. We had somebody else ask, like, how to keep up on the weeds because he has a morning glory problem. And even in his raised beds, he's not keeping up. And I was like, you need to have one raised bed, 4 feet by 8 feet, and just do that well. You've got like 700 kids and a busy business, and your wife is working too, and you're raising goats, so you're doing a lot of really cool stuff, and it just may not be the time to have the giant garden. Make the money, buy the stuff, keep that one 4x8 bed with the stuff you really like, and see how that goes. See if you can keep up on the morning glory then. And by the way, morning glory grows really fast, so he's not wrong. It's like you'll come out, there was no morning glory the morning, and in the evening there's morning glory that's like 8 inches long. Like it grows super fast. That actually may be a case for putting 2 inches of cardboard in, and then you'll still be fighting it around the edges. That's all I'm saying. But what I'm finding is as my soil gets better, I have less weird weed pressure, and if I keep up on it. But some weeds just persist. Like this year, I've had an endemic of the poison hemlock, which freaks some people out. I just pull it out and compost it because it's not going to hurt my compost. It's not unless you're cramming it in your face, it's not going to kill you either, or rubbing it all over your skin or something. Like don't do that. If you have a big patch to deal with, like consider some protective gear so you're not getting hemlock juice all over you. But basically a lot of plants are poisonous. That's one that for some reason this year it's been a big poison hemlock year everywhere. So that's what I would do with a small garden. Okay. And prioritizing. It's like start with the fresh stuff, grow a little bit of production, and then develop the relationships with other people who are growing in bigger gardens and can that stuff and dry that stuff and freeze that stuff. David in Texas. What's the cheapest way to test the product idea from your homestead before going all in? I've got eggs, herbs, and soap. But I don't want to waste time. David, you asked me the wrong question. I would not worry about cheap or wasting time. If you're developing homestead revenue streams, first of all, you need to track everything. You need to track your time. And none of us like doing this. We want to be outside in the garden, okay? We want to be outside with our livestock. I get it. I want to as well. I have gone through years of not doing this well. It has cost me money. So this is what I have learned in the last 24 months of getting my financial poop in a scoop. If I track by business unit, and I define a business like eggs would be a business unit for me, or a product line, actually. It's not a business unit. It's a product line. I want to know how much the feed costs, how much time it takes to take care of the chickens or ducks or whatever you're getting eggs from, how many bird losses I have a year, how many eggs are coming out, average per bird, how much electricity I'm using, how much did it take me to build the coop they're in, any other infrastructure I spent money on. The infrastructure I put aside and I divide it by about how many years I think it'll last. So if I think it's going to last 5 years, then it's $1,000 in. $1,000 divided by 5 means I'm spending for the infrastructure of $1,000 worth of stuff, $200 a year. So I just figured that out. And the way I start is by being pretty good at tracking for a month. And I see, and then I multiply that by 12. And now I know in the winter, different numbers happen versus the summer. This is just from the initial planning point, right? But I wouldn't be asking what's the cheapest way to test the product idea. Like start selling your damn eggs. If you have extra eggs, sell them. Make the price be what it takes for you to produce it, plus a premium for how well you're treating your animals and how premium your product is. Because that's the other thing is like, where else can you get air-dried oregano that was grown in a regenerative agricultural food forest? That's what I've got. I've got a lot of that right now. It's not dried all the way, but I am not drying it with heat. I'm drying it air dry, which preserves the flavor, and it's more nutrient dense than the oregano you can get at the store. And it hasn't been sitting around on the grocery store shelf for 6 months or a year, right? 2 years. Who knows? Herbs lose flavor over time. So the question is that I'd be asking is, how can I generate revenue from this, and how do I track it? Because at this point, it's not about am I not wasting time. Yes, you need to be cognizant of your time, but you try and you learn and you adjust and you decide. And the thing you really need to decide is, am I making a profit from my homestead or not? If you are, then go start making a profit from your homestead. And what'll happen at first is you won't. You won't. But eventually, if you're keeping up with your tracking and you're focusing on designing it to make a profit, you will. Because you've decided that's what you got to do. And part of that means you got to sell your stuff, right? If you don't sell it, you're not making any money at all. That being said, it's been really a joy to watch Hofgrid Homestead out in, they're near Waverly. I can't remember the name of the town they're in. Go from, we think we're going to start raising some chickens, Joel Salatin style, and pork, to renaming the farm Hofgrid Meat Company and starting to do drop-offs and deliveries in Nashville. Like, I'm really proud of what she's done there. Like, they moved their family out to some family land, lived in a camper with 4 of them, I believe, in a camper, and started raising meat regeneratively without any training at all. They just watched YouTube and figured it out, and they make some of the best chicken I've had. So, that's because they just went for it. Nate in Kentucky says, how do you approach banking and online payments without getting sucked deeper into centralized, into the matrix, into centralized control of all the things? Big government is coming to get me. This is the wrong question again, too. We have a lot of paranoia in our network about participating in the system. And that makes sense, because what do we talk about here? It's building the life you choose on your terms. So somebody's not living your life for you. How does somebody live your life for you? You go along to get along, tap into the system, and cross all your T's and dot all your I's and do all the hoops you're supposed to jump through to have a happy life and finance your house and all of those things, right? And then next thing you know, you have a job you hate, no control over your schedule, and a bunch of debt you got to deal with, so you can't quit your job. And that, my friends, is the system taking advantage of you, and that's living the life you don't want to live. So I actually think this question should have been more like, how do we opt out of the system? But on the business side, banking and online payments without getting sucked deeper into centralized control. I know a few people who have completely opted out of the banking system, and they live a different kind of life. They also are not in this country. But they managed to make it happen because they're so passionate about building an alternative economy. Okay. I know very few people like that. And you can go check out Derek Bros and what he's done. You can go check out how he's getting that done, because he has done that, and learn from him. But if you're not in a place where your mindset is right, if you're still stuck in a poverty mindset, or where you're basically independently wealthy, or where you're passionate enough that you're going to make it happen no matter what, I wouldn't worry about it. I would instead worry about building resilience into and redundancy into what you're doing, right? So like on the business side, build wealth and make your business centered around profit. And in order to do that, yes, accept payments from the traditional banking system, which they'll charge you a fee for. So you build that fee into your price. You don't pass it on to your customer. And track everything the way you're supposed to track it, and do what you got to do to make money. Because when you have more money, it's easier not to be trapped in the system, right? You have a couple million sitting around. It's a little easier when things go wrong, or it's a little easier to not have to go to work when there are like mandates, right? If you're seeing the video, you'll see the sign I made. Those of us who were working for ourselves didn't worry about losing our jobs over that. So I think the bigger question is, how do you opt out of the system? And that is to become ungovernable. Like, it doesn't matter what happens, because I've figured out how to build enough community, wealth, skills, and layers of buffer and redundancies that I can kind of flow out of it and into it as I need to. But I definitely tap into the system for wealth building for sure. I really like getting my imported chocolate from Switzerland, for example, and that requires me to use the banking system most of the time. Unless Switzerland, are you listening? Are we going to do a Bitcoin transition action? Okay, so there's a couple things. So relationships and community are the biggest thing you're going to need to opt out of the system. Doing commerce with and developing friendships with and cross promoting with people who care about this too make you more resilient. And some of these people work high up in corporations that are totally in the system. They give you information before things go wrong, or they're able to connect you with things when nobody else can get it, right? But also, when you go looking for what do I want like a custom made ceramic cup, maybe look in the network first, look in your community first before you just go to cheapmugs.com or whatever the latest, imprinting thing is. Those relationships really matter. And as what's been happening a lot in the last 12 months with different communities like Midwest Preparedness Project and other places and SOE is that we have this locus around us, right? Like Holler Homestead, Living Free in Tennessee, there's a locus of people who come here. Many of them are within an hour of the Holler Homestead. Dixon Homesteaders Alliance Group, right? Many of them are within an hour of where they meet up. SOE, people like they're coming into SOE, Midwest Preparedness. They have a bigger region, right? And then they have other sub-communities in Kansas and in that area. They pull from Missouri too, because, you start pulling from states around you. Is that we've got enough community that we can, in fact, do a lot of things with each other without looking outside the community. And when we look outside the community, because we all know each other, we're like, oh, I can't get it at LFTN, but SOE has it. Or I can't get it at LFTN or SOE, but the Midwest Preparedness Guides have like somebody who does that. And it's like we have a decentralized set of communities, right? Like there's everybody who wants to opt out, but then we're forming bonds and friendships and federating and passing information back and forth. And that's how the counter economy goes, right? And then the banking system piece, like cryptocurrency, once you have some, you're outside the banking system. You've become your own bank, especially if you do that with purpose. So if you're resisting technology and learning about Bitcoin, you're wrong. If you are really worried about this, I hope you have figured out how to use Nostr. You have some cryptocurrency and you've figured out how to interact with people in that way, how to accept and send sats, because that's the obvious answer there. So all of that is to say, though, know your risk and make your decision about how far you want to push those things. That's probably the best way for me to say that. Okay. Rachel from North Carolina. Carson says, you, Jack, and John are overnight success. Yeah. Yeah, Carson, did you hear I'm pre-selling coffee to get an HVAC replacement for the roasting shack so I don't have to roast in 120-degree heat in there because it gets really hot in there, and it's hot now. So I'm an overnight success. But I just spent all my money on coffee beans, and also now I need HVAC. Rachel from North Carolina asks, how do you keep your business tasks organized when your farm life, podcasts, and everything else are constantly pulling at you? Rachel, I have a confession to make. If you were to walk in my kitchen right now, you would see that I put out the lunch tray for 2 p.m. when we eat lunch. Tactical came in and ate some, and I told him to put it away when he was done, and there's a 50% chance he remembered to put it away. So there might be like actual food sitting on my counter, and there's for sure dirty dishes in the sink. I do use the My Three Things method. So I write down what I need to do, and I make a list of everything for the day. I have benchmarks of when I need to do things, like if I have this podcast or an appointment or whatever. And then I choose the 3 most important things to do for the day. And I write them at the top. Like I have them on the list, but I write them at the top too. And then I do those things. They're do or die things. I don't do more than 3 because my head only really keeps track of 3 things at a time. And it's basically, if I get all 3 done early, then it's just a success and I get to feel that dopamine rush. And then I do other things, but I know I've done the most important things. And if I see something coming up time and time and time again, if for whatever reason I'm not doing it, it's either not important or it's a frog I need to eat. And then it becomes the first thing I do the next day. So that's what I do. And it's partially related to having gone through the process of making a life strategic plan and setting my vision. We're actually in a time of flux right now here where the Holler Neighbors and the Holler Homestead vision, mission is growing. And so it's going to change. Like the words are going to change and where we put our time is changing a little bit. And you're already starting to see some of those things come out at this point. But it's helpful to have that, even if it changes over time, because it gives you a direction to go and it gives you a filter through which you can just sort of figure out, what you want to be doing. And then if you get part of the way down that whole thing, you can basically sigh because you decided on something you didn't want. So the thing about creating your vision and feeling like you want to go that direction and then going that direction is sometimes you start going that direction and you realize you hate it. Like if I had gone commercial with Hollow Roast Coffee and then decided I actually hate roasting coffee, that would have been a bummer, but it actually wouldn't have been the end of the world. I would have been like, okay, but it's making this much money, so I'll do it while I transition to something else. Right. And then I would have gone back to the drawing board. Now, Hollow Roast Coffee has its own vision statement, but it is part of my long-term strategy to have some income and connect people with really delicious, freshly roasted coffee. And but as I was talking to Tactical, because as we're changing the focus here, like we're growing the vision of the Holler Homestead, I was like, the thing is, the coffee I could sell a lot more, but I can't do it and produce it the way I'm doing it. So my choice is change how I produce it and communicate that, or just decide that it's going to stay small. And it's going to stay, on the small side so that it can continue to be craft roasted coffee, roasted to order and really delicious. And that means at some point I can't take new customers. We get to that point. It is what it is. Like what's happening this month is there's one bean that's going out of stock for a month because I could not source it anymore. I can source it at the end of July, but when I went to try, when I talked to the coffee folks about it, they weren't even sure if they could move it in to the country because there's been some up and down in the coffee. It's been a little dramatic in the coffee bean sourcing world this year. And then I found out they could get it in, but they had pre-sold all except for 29 bags of the bean I use in my Hollow Roast blend, by the way, in my house coffee. And so I pre-ordered all the bags I need for a year, which is about $10,000 worth of coffee. And that was cool. And I just had to have faith that that's going to happen, right? But, when that coffee's gone, it's gone. And I decided, because it's both a single source bean on the site and in the house blend, which is the most popular thing, that I'm going to make that single, like basically you can't get that single source bean for me anymore until I have more in, unless you were already a subscription customer. That's it. Because it's most important to preserve the people who've supported me all along. And then the house blend is what it is. Now, if I run out of that bean before I get that bean, the house blend is going to change for a few weeks and we'll communicate about that. So, it's just you got to do it. You got to prioritize. And the most important word that you have at your disposal is no. and Jack was talking about this on the show the other day. Like early on when he was building some success, he didn't say no enough and he got into trouble, which happened to me last year, by the way, in case you want to know why I was frantic. And he had to get good at saying no to be more successful. So you have to do the same thing. And sometimes no looks like dishes in the sink. And sometimes no looks like I only have 2 garden beds really that I'm functionally doing here. And sometimes no looks like that big thing that I used to do that used to be part of my identity is no longer there. But the only way you get there is by assessing what you're doing and building towards that vision and spending the time every day doing it. Every time I don't do my 3 things for a week or 2, I'm like, why am I so frantic? And I'm like, oh, that's why I'm so frantic. Okay, I got it. Okay, Ian from Alabama. I'm thinking about building a greenhouse. What lesson did you learn from the swim spa greenhouse idea that might save me time and money? So background on this is I had a great idea while I was on a walk about how I have a swim spa. It needs a cover, like a cover building over it. And it produces heat and humidity. So why not make it a greenhouse? And I had my spring workshop. Alan Booker was there. Jack Spirko was there. Ryan Steva was there. Carrie Brown was there. Like all of these really cool permaculture people were there. So we had a brainstorming session on the agenda. Very selfish move on my part, but also educational for people. Alan Booker's designed a lot of interesting greenhouses, guys. So just as an aside, you should totally connect with him and see if he has any like training stuff on greenhouses or materials he could share with you. And we drew it out and they went and they looked at the site and we came to a couple of conclusions. The first conclusion is I need to move some overhead wiring to be underground for me to put a greenhouse there. The second conclusion I came to is maybe I shouldn't be putting a greenhouse over the swim spa. As a matter of fact, I could design it to have a greenhouse over it and it could be really cool, but also it could make the swimming experience less than pleasant. So I believe the direction I'm going now with that is not to put the greenhouse there and to put the greenhouse somewhere else. I may even be able to tap into the heat from the greenhouse from the swim spa in a greenhouse situation in the winter time. But the size of structure I was going to be looking at putting into to fill all the needs I wanted is just bigger than I want. So my next step is to cover the swim spa with just like a carport so that it's easier to use in the rain and it's a little bit protected. And then eventually we'll bury those wires and all the other things. But, that is what it is. So as far as what I would do in your shoes about building a greenhouse is figure out what you want the greenhouse for. And you're in Alabama. So like, do you need it? You need to think about the solar aspect and how it's not going to kill the things in there or just get blastingly hot in the summer. But then also overwinter the things you want to overwinter. So yeah, and you can do like the drawings we had involve like non-sun permeable roof that casts shade in the summer because the sun's higher up in our hemisphere in the summer, right? So it's going directly down. And then as it goes south, it comes in the more sunlight permeable panels. So you get sun in the winter and no sun in the summer. And then you have to have ways to cool it, like, to have wind flow and that sort of thing in the summer. But you don't want to have it completely uninsulated in the winter because when we have one of those 5-degree things happen, that's no good. And then having heat sinks in there, to sort of keep it more solidly one temperature, can't think of the word right now, is really helpful. And Alan, he drew a great picture. Like it's on my YouTube channel. Check it out. He drew a picture of how to do that. And he's from Alabama. So he'd be a good resource for you. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Last question of the show today is from Ohio, Patrick. I want to host a small event on my property. What's the best way to start without getting overwhelmed by logistics or liability? That's a tough one. Having paid events on your property opens you up to lawsuits. And there's no way around it. Like you can get insurance and then the insurance covers things. But if somebody really wants to sue you over something, they can sue you. So my approach has been to get insurance, just in case something goes wrong. Have a waiver sign, and do my best to keep the quality of people who are on the property to be people who are not just out here to sue me. I mean, if you sue me, like I have that much you can take, but it would suck, right? It would suck to be sued. So, in Tennessee, if you are an agritourism site, there is some additional protections if you put signage up. We have that signage up. In every state, that's going to be different. So you're going to have to look in your state to figure that out. But as far as how to host a small event on your property, the way I would start would be not to host a small event on your property. I would start by doing a little party or a potluck or a campfire and have more of a, hey, let's get together and hang out thing. You can get event insurance for that if you want, or you can have waivers signed for that if you want to. But the whole point is don't charge money and have something that's not a teaching something. Just have people over. Carrie Brown and Angel did this, I think, because they had their first meetup there. It was just sort of like homesteader meetup and swap, like swap meet or whatever. And when they did that, they learned, okay, if I have 10 or 20 people here, this is what it's like. And if nobody's paid anything, they're not mad at you if the bathroom situation isn't ideal, or you have to keep running to get water for them, or it's cold or it's hot or it's raining. But that will really open your eyes about the flow of where parking's going to be and all of those things. And then I would actually go to my membership portal and watch the hosting a small event on your homestead webinar. And because I go through a lot of other things on that, just related to how to coordinate the event. But it's about, if you've never coordinated an event before, it's going to be hard the first time, because you got to think about, how do people sign up? How do I accept money? What am I going to feed them? How do I keep them warm, cool, hydrated, fed? How do I park the cars? Do we have all the AV we need to deliver what we said we're going to do? Are they camping, not camping? And a meetup just solves a lot of that for you. But then the next step is to do an event. And how do you sell the event? How do you communicate about the event? Like all of those things. Go to some events and see what you like and what you don't like about what people are doing. And then steal those ideas, right? That's another good thing to do. Anyway, that's all the questions I had in. I think I'll get back to doing more variety shows. If you want to get a question in, you can send it to me, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com, or go over to livingfreeintennessee.com and click on contact. That goes to you. Jim's saying porta potties. Yeah, you got to think about where people go to the bathroom. This is back on the events thing. And there are public places that you can host your event too. Yeah, you could rent a covered area at a local park and do a thing. And that works. We have one right down the road. I've thought about doing some like potlucky things down there too. Anyway, if you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in two ways. One, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. Two, consider becoming a member. Head over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out about that. And don't forget, we're doing the HVAC pre-buy gift card. Just go to hollerroast.com, click on coffee shop. It's the first product right now. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.